Hey, thanks for joining the Ripple Effect. I'm Steve Harper. I'm super excited to have Roy Gatling with me today to talk a little bit about the ripple effect and the power of leadership. Thanks for joining us, Roy.
Thank you, Steve. I'm happy to be here with you.
Well, this is our first official Google Hangout, so thanks for bearing with me in terms of the technical difficulties in getting set up.
Oh, it was for a Friday afternoon. It was a big fun.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah, it would have been the only thing that would make it better is wood beer or something. So
I
next
wouldn't
time.
argue with that.
Hey, well, Roy, tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe a little bit of your background, kind of what you're focused on today, and then we'll dive into the leadership topic.
Sure. Long-time Dell employee, maybe too long, but I was there in the very beginning with less than 50 people, and got to experience a lot of that growth through the 90s and, of course, into the 2000s and such, and recently left here in 2014. And so I got to do a lot of different things, starting honestly at the bottom or pretty close to it, and leaving in a pretty decent role that was involved in mergers and acquisitions and stuff like that. So I got to do a lot of different things, work with some great people, and it's a wonderful experience. These days, I'm off trying to kind of get my own thing going. I'm focused on a couple of areas. Project management, something I know a fair amount about because a lot of what I did was at Dell was that. The other thing that I've got a pretty significant interest in has to do with analytics and data visualization, things like that. Of course, those are hot topics these days. And that interest was spawned by one of the M&A deals that we worked on a while back.
Oh, fantastic! So, I guess you've seen obviously with your career with Dell and obviously in mergers and acquisitions, you've gotten to see a lot of different examples of great leadership and maybe not so great leadership. And what does I guess maybe a good place to start as we talk about the ripple effect of leadership. What does good leadership mean to you, and what have you seen throughout your career?
Sure. I think good leadership to me is there's a few things that I look for, and there's a couple things that I've talked to people about with regard to that. Number one, they've got, I think a good leader is someone who's good at making connections. You're a perfect example of that. Right? So,
Thank you.
You have to be able to connect with people because it's all about that. That old saying about a guy a leader without any followers is just a guy taking a walk. And, so that's very true. So you have to be able to connect. Now, it's one thing to make the connections or to have a title that allows you to say, okay, this is some group I've got some responsibility for. But beyond that, I think people look for competence. And so, do you know your stuff, whatever that might be? And so, I think with competence, then the other thing that comes up is confidence. So, I think those things that kind of go in a circle. So, I look for that connection, competence, and then ultimately confidence. And I think it's a two-way street because the folks that you're leading have to have that confidence in you and believe that you're competent. And likewise, you're looking for people that have the ability to go off and do the good things you need them to do.
Absolutely. Well, that's a great definition. Obviously, I love how you frame that up, and I agree with that circle wholeheartedly, without question. One of the things that I get the pleasure of doing is talking to a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of business owners and corporate leaders. And what are some of the good leaders that you see out there today in the world that some of these folks ought to be, following and or maybe mirroring?
Sure. There's a couple of people that come to mind, and for different reasons. I look at a guy like Elon Musk. Here's someone who's I think maybe has the more positive qualities that Steve Jobs had, with perhaps fewer of the not so positive qualities that Steve Jobs had. But a guy who's definitely a visionary and is able to communicate that vision, which is another one of those leadership traits that I think you look for. But able to
Sure.
come up with a vision and communicate that very simply and very clearly and get people behind it. And to get people behind those things, it usually has to be a grand vision, something that's huge. And he certainly has done that. So he's one. Um, Others, there's a guy named Bill Campbell. He's the chairman of the board at Intuit, and Bill Campbell has been called coach for many years because he was a football coach at Columbia University in New York in his mid to late 30s, and then he went out to Silicon Valley, and he did fantastic things in Silicon Valley. I mean, he was a VP at Apple. He's been on the board at Apple and Google and involved with Twitter, and he's one of the prominent mentors out there in that area. And the thing that he's done is try to get people focused on getting the short-term or near-term tasks done and done well without losing sight of the big picture.
Nice.
So there's always that vision or the high-end goal. Some people smarter than me would say there's tactical and strategic things you got to do. But basically, there's near-term things that get us to the long term. Almost a buddy of mine equated it to farming the other day. You got to plant the seeds, you got to water, you got to hoe, you got to do all these things to get the crop at the end.
Yep. Well, and that's a great example because that's what like good connecting is all about, right? It's what I talk about a lot with the Ripple and the concept of building those relationships. And you touched on it, right? As a good leader is a good connector, and they're figuring out ways to connect with their team. And we've all heard that good leaders surround themselves with smarter people than they are than themselves, and you hire and look for the talent that makes you look good. But good leaders understand how to cultivate that, and how to not only plant that crop, but how to bring it along and watch it, flourish and grow, and then, how to cultivate it, when it's time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I got to tell you a quick story. I had dinner with a very close friend of mine on Monday night. This guy is from France, and he was in the country visiting for a while. He reported to me at Dell about 10 years ago, not quite, but close. And he and I had worked together on a team. He was a peer, but he was an engineering manager, but he didn't really have people responsibilities for the most part. He was just a technical guy. And I remember I had an opening for a manager. I needed to hire one. And I went to my boss saying, this is after we did some interviews, I said, this is the guy I want to hire. And my boss was like, man, I don't think so, blah, blah, blah. And I said, look, here's the deal. If it works out, I get an A on my report card, and so does he. And if it doesn't, I get the F on my report card, right? So it's all going to be on me if it doesn't work. But if it does, hey, we're both going to get good guys. So he's like, okay, you're next. So make a long story short, this guy went on. He did a great job at Dell. He left Dell. He's gone to a couple of other companies since. He was just promoted to Senior VP at F5 for all of Asia Pacific.
Wow.
Now, I had told him years ago, in fact, two guys that reported to me, he was one of them, and I said, one day I'll probably work for you. But this is back to your point about hiring people that are better than us and such. I always look for that because they made my job easier, and I was honestly, sincerely trying to help really good, talented people move up and on through to do great things. So anyway, he's made me very proud and happy, and he's a close friend.
What a great story. That's a fantastic story. And hopefully he paid for dinner.
He did. He did.
That's great. Well, that kind of leads me to the next point, which is, obviously the concept I love, which is the ripple effect. But how does the ripple effect impact in leadership, do you think? Clearly I think you just illustrated a really, really good story there where you're sort of, you put your reputation and your neck on the line, so to speak, because you saw potential in this hire, and obviously the ripples for him and his career, and the good guy status and the A+ on the report card for you once it proved to be a good hire, obviously came to fruition. But how else do you see the ripple effect concept playing out in the leadership space?
Gosh, there's a lot of ways, Steve. There's no doubt that this whole connection thing plays out in a number of different ways. Throughout the time that I spent at Dell, I was able to use connections and a network internally to help get a lot of things done. When things were log jammed, I could call someone, and it was usually just a matter of picking up the phone and say, hey, can we just all get along? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it would get things solved. There were other ways where I was able to help people perhaps get interviews or considered, or even just a simple introductory meeting and just get to know someone or know something more about a particular department or what they did. But it helped to connect other people. The other thing is that as time has gone on, a number of the folks that I worked with and knew have now left Dell, and they're out in the world.
Yep.
And I've got connections all over the place now that I still communicate with regularly. I think I've got a list of people that I go down and make sure I keep up with them. I had lunch with a guy today that's still at Dell, and I called one that, in fact, he was my former boss just a few months ago, who's now in Denver doing some work up there, and I called him at lunch just to say hi and see how he's doing. But the the thing that you have mentioned to many people and reminded me and others about is, you have to care and feed that network, and not just go to people when you need something, and so I try to practice that. I don't know if I always do, but I try to. But I think that the one thing I found, probably more than anything, is that I think you're just a better person overall for it.
Yeah.
You learn new things, you meet new people, you're exposed to a great restaurant or movie or who knows what. Every time I'm around you, I end up meeting someone new, and they end up being a great connection for who knows what. And it can be just a personal thing, just a fun thing. It doesn't have to be, what can you do for me, what can I do for you? So, the whole, you don't know when you cast the stone into the water where the ripples will go. But they go out, and sometimes they go out farther and longer than you ever imagined they will.
Absolutely. Well, well said. That's a really good point. And I was thinking as you were talking. I recently had a coaching client with someone that had been. He's at the sort of the latter stages of his career, been very successful in the medical device field, and has gone through, you name it, he's gone through several of the major companies, and either through acquisition or what have you, is always kind of hired up to the next role. And then he kind of hit a wall and ended up at a company that, for one reason or another, didn't anticipate or didn't see the product that they have was not going to be ultimately approved, by the I guess it was the FDA. And so they ended up going through a round of layoffs, and of course they start at the top and start whacking hard, right? And he was one of the first to go, and he was really he was really gutted. And the challenge for him was, trying to look back, and say, okay, where do I start? How do I go and find my next career? Because he's not ready to retire. And he came back and he said, there's a handful of guys I've worked with all my life that are at similar positions or states that I'm at or I was at, and I'm not necessarily going to go to those guys because they're competitors or close friends, and I don't want to call that favor in, and they're doing what I want to be doing. And I kept referring him back to all the, the thing that I knew he had been really good at throughout his career was cultivating the talent, right? And I said, you look at your span of a 25, 30-year career and how many lives you've touched along the way, and all those people that you hired that were smart at the time that you hired them, and of course they were so smart they got hired away, right? They got recruited, and many of them are running their own shops, they're doing their own thing. And I was encouraging him to look at how to leverage those ripples. And of course, part of the problem, and you touched on it, is you've got to stay and maintain, connections to a lot of those people. So, some of those relationships he had not been very good at. But no time like the present. I've been bad, 10 years head buried. I haven't had an opportunity to. I should have been reaching out to you all along, but there's no time like the present. And what it ended up turning out to be was he found that these people that he had garnered all this respect and all this momentum with for their careers really remembered that, right? And they all lined up to try and help him find his next role and next position. And it was really an awesome thing to see how the power of that network, although he was a bit disconnected, still came and it rippled back to him. so many years later. And he's actually went to work with one of his first, district managers he hired like 25 years ago, and she's now in a role of, she's actually a COO of a company, and it ultimately came back to benefit him, and he's now landed in a position. He's not quite back up to the stature that he was at, but he's employed, and he's not not hungry, and he's back doing what he loves, and he's building teams, and he's doing his thing. And what I think it proved out to be is he didn't have to have the title, and he didn't have to be the top dog. And in this phase of his career, he even gets an opportunity to apply what he learned over these 25, 30 years about cultivating that talent even a little bit more directly than if he was in the C-suite. So you just never know.
Yeah, that's nice. I've only been away from Dell for a few months, and today I had lunch with a fellow that's still working there, and he's got a contact at eBay. We know as well, and he was going to reach out to her to try to stir up a conversation. She handles all the M&A activity at eBay, and so anyway, he was going to bring that up. To be happy to talk to her, and who knows. And then I got home before this call, and like I said, a buddy of mine was heading to the Atlanta airport to come back to Austin, saying, "I got to have you come work with me on such and such." He's working for NCR now.
Yep.
And then the fellow that I mentioned I had dinner with on Monday night, going off to Singapore, he's saying, "Hey, come stay in my house outside Geneva for 3 years, and or maybe I'll hire you to come work with me in Singapore." No, yeah, who knows? But
Yep.
the point is that it gets right back to what you're talking about here, is that you never know when that ripple will bounce back. And I'm not asking these folks for anything, and we're just having conversations. And if all we do is have a cold beer or a cup of coffee together and reminisce a little bit, and maybe
Yep.
talk about the things that are happening now and they're looking to do in the future, then that's fine.
Well, I mean, there is no better connector than you. You are a shining example of everything that I talk about, with the ripple effect. And I'm honored by our friendship and honored to know you. And there's no doubt there's, opportunities abound that will flow your way. And I'm hoping they don't distract you too much so that you actually get that opportunity to, to do your own thing. But my guess is that you'll probably have so many overwhelming opportunities that probably won't be the case. But I make an excellent pin caddy, so wherever you go, I'm happy to, I'm happy to do whatever.
I'll be carrying your bags, buddy.
Yeah, I don't think so. Well, tell people how they can find you, Roy, because I mean, you put out some great tweets, and I know you're on a couple of different social media sites. The ones that you feel comfortable sharing, would you let people know how they can find you?
Sure. Well, I am on Twitter, and R Gatling, R for Roy, Gatling is the last name, Gatling, is my Twitter handle, and I'm out there on LinkedIn as well, just Roy Gatling, and you'll see my ugly mug out there, and I hope I don't break the camera on my compy here. But I'm out there. I also have a website that I pulled together. In fact, I need to get you to give me a little feedback on it.
Yeah.
But the URL is Project Management CEO. It's all one word, projectmanagementceo.com. And again, you'll know it's me because you'll see my lovely, not so lovely photo up there. But it's all about project management and trying to bring a little bit different, perhaps a higher level perspective to that and some of the things I might be able to help with. But I did have the opportunity to spend a lot of time with guys that were CEOs prior to coming to Dell, or maybe COOs prior to coming to Dell. And it's amazing what you can learn in an airport lounge or at lunch or what have you with some of these guys. So I was fortunate in that.
Well, that's great. Well, I definitely appreciate you making the time for today's Google Hangout. I'm super excited that you're technically my first guest. So once we hit stop broadcast, I don't know what exactly happens, but
well, we'll find out.
That's part of the adventure, right? Is we dive in with both feet and just kind of see what happens. We'll make as big a splash as we possibly can.
There you go. Well, I want you to call me back afterwards because I want to talk to you about some other things.
Absolutely. I'll give you a ring as soon as we're done here.
All right.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it, Roy. Thanks for joining the Ripple Effect of Leadership, and I hope that we can have a couple more of these conversations here in the very near future.
Oh yeah, I'd love to, and I love you, man. I really do.
I love you too, man. All right. Thanks so much.
See you, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Bye.